Hello and welcome back to Where No Pod Has Gone Before. Today I am your host. My name is Titan.
And I'm Julian. I'm co-piloting today for once.
Indeed, we're switching things up a little bit. Today we've got a special episode because it is the 21st of May, which is the day that Multivac is first asked the last question. Today we're going to be looking at our first book, for want of a better word. I mean, they are short stories.
Very
rather
short,
than
I would say.
Yeah, very short, very short. So definitely, if you haven't read these stories yet, you can do so in 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So pause now if you haven't read them. Go give them a quick read, and then come back for the discussion. But
Sorry, by them you mean also it's the last question and the last answer.
Yes,
They're
exactly.
kind of spiritually related, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, doing a little bit of research, I saw that they're actually very far apart in time from when he wrote them. Last question was sometime in the 50s. Last answer was in the 80s at some stage.
Right.
But I mean, obviously, sort of just from the title, they are relatively linked. I think they're linked mostly in the sense that they are in the far future, right? They predict sort of the ultimate fate of mankind in one way or the other.
And I guess there's a similar trick to them as well, which we can talk about.
Okay, yes, we must definitely talk about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so these are two short stories by Isaac Asimov. So if you are familiar, I think if you're familiar with anything from him, it's probably The Last Question, right? We mentioned briefly in the previous episode, or you did, that it was his personal favorite story that he ever wrote.
And the copy that I have in front of me starts with a little preamble by him saying,
Yes,
this
same.
is by far my favorite story of all I've written. And you can see why someone who is interested in this stuff might be very proud of this. It's very well
I think so, right?
thought out and teased out.
I mean, I can imagine it's probably the sort of thing he didn't really plan. He just sat down and it sort of came to him as he wrote it, right? I can imagine
he was thinking about entropy. I was like, wait, what? Oh, that's a great story.
Exactly. And like, what's the next logical step, right? It's very sort of progressive, very logical. And yeah, I read something as well where it said a lot of people, when he was still alive, some fans would come up to him and they'd say, I read this short story by you. I can't remember what it's called. What is it? And he was like, it's The Last Question. He knew exactly what everyone was asking about, right? Because, I mean, I think that's probably how I sort of stumbled upon it as well. I remember sometime in my teenage years discovering it online somewhere, reading it and being like, this is amazing, right? Like, this is one of the best things I've ever read. And then sort of finding it again years later, right? And I think I actually started with The Last Answer. I think I found that first.
That makes sense for you as a teenager.
Exactly. I think it
given
was
what we were interested in.
Exactly. During all of my existential crises and stuff, I think I stumbled upon it at some stage. Yeah. I mean, what about yourself though? You've said you mentioned that you have read it before at some stage.
So I actually discovered it, The Last Question, about 8-9 months ago, on the recommendation of a physicist. It was a video or a podcast that I kind of had on in the background. And, you know, if someone very clever recommends something that I've never heard of, I'm straight away going to Google it. And
right, yeah.
Given that it's such a quick read, I went straight in, and you can tell it's very clear to see why a physicist would enjoy this, because
right, yes,
you know, it's not just like a stuffy textbook description of a concept. It's, you know, the concept is teased out through imagination and invention, and it's, you know, we always talk about sci-fi. We like the space travel and the lasers and future civilizations, and
Yeah.
it's all in here. It's all that packaging that we love is there,
Yeah.
but then that that nugget, that you sit with afterwards for hours, days, weeks, whatever, is
Yes.
there as well.
Yeah.
And to my eternal shame, well, hopefully not eternal, it was the only. These are the only Asimov things that I've read. Obviously, I've seen the Will Smith I, Robot,
Right. Yes. Yeah.
which obviously is based on one of his novels. I'm quite keen to get to Foundation, also to kind of read along with the Apple show, because I believe it's quite different.
Yes.
So I would quite enjoy
Yes.
comparing those.
Right. Yeah.
But this is a great start, I think, for the Asimov journey.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, up until fairly recently as well, it was also my only Asimov stuff. I have now read Foundation, maybe 2 years ago or something, and I mean, there was a little some hints of it already in the story. Is that he loves doing sort of, he's created this entire world and like how it works, and then he sort of just, he doesn't explain anything to you, he just has a conversation between two characters, um, with snippets about things that are going on, and you're supposed to
Yeah.
sort of pick up on it. So like at some stage they're talking about the galactic importance of this and the planning of that and blah blah blah, and you're just sort of supposed to pick up on it, right? And Foundation is like that, and it skips between time and characters and everything, and it's quite difficult to follow. So it's a sort of book where I mean, I've read it, but I can barely tell you anything about it. I mean, I think I need to like sit down. You can't like sit back on a couch and like read it lazily. You've got to like sit down and like analyze this thing. So I think a lot of his other work is like that. So that's why this is, I think, the starting point for many people, because it's accessible, right?
Very. Yeah.
And yeah, you were saying as well, I think it is an absolutely classic example of real pure science fiction. I mean, he's taken one scientific idea, entropy, and he's created an entire story out of just that idea, sort of,
Yeah.
extrapolating that idea and seeing what its importance is.
And it doesn't matter. The other stuff doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about hyperspace and
Yes,
the quantum computing and human
exactly.
consciousness. Those are topics that can be dealt with in other science fiction stories.
Exactly.
But this is about entropy.
Yeah, exactly. He drops the names here and there. He says hyperspace and this and that and whatever, and you just sort of like, yeah, okay, cool. We're far in the future, just gonna accept that for now. But that's not the story that we're being told. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I suppose we will start by just going through the story, pretty much, and talking about what happens as we go, right?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, so I mean, we start off in like an underground computer lab, I suppose, with two characters, and they are celebrating the success of Multivac, which we sort of learn is a brand new supercomputer that takes up a lot of space underground, and sort of clear that this is beyond any computer that has existed already.
So we might say now that this is a quantum computer, right?
Well, yes. I mean, probably. I was gonna look into it a little bit more, but later on he starts talking about like the advances in actual computing as well. But probably this is some sort of quantum computer, especially or more so as well, just AI as well, but actual AI.
Yeah, and it's also that it's so advanced that no human can even
Yes.
understand it or upgrade it or anything. It's now
Yes.
pretty much independent, right? It will upgrade itself, it
Yeah.
will maintain itself, and things like that. So it's, I guess these guys' jobs is just sort of aesthetic, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
sense?
at this stage, I think, yeah, you still need, technicians who can replace some broken components and also feed it instructions and all of that. So yeah, it sort of says that these people know as much as is possible, right, for a person to know about this machine. But obviously, it's been built by a group of people, sort of assembled in different parts and whatever. So no one knows everything about it. Now that it's been switched on, it's sort of its own entity, I suppose.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, its first sort of task is to solve the energy crisis, I suppose, right? So this is what they are now celebrating. Is a couple weeks ago, it has now engineered some sort of device in orbit which can harness all of the solar energy that is coming to Earth, I suppose.
Yeah. And then beaming that down to Earth.
And beaming it down to Earth. So now they can switch off all the coal power stations, all the uranium power stations, and they've got all the power they could ever want.
Yeah. And now travel around the solar system is incredibly, much easier and much more accessible.
Yes, exactly. So it's clear that it's like already sort of taking over. I mean, I'm going to say already, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but it's taking on a parent role to man, right? It's already, from this point on, man sort of relinquishes its quest to know the answers. It has multivac to do it for it, right? So man still goes out and lives their lives in the universe, but multivac is sort of taking the guiding role from this point on.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, these two guys are sitting there with a bottle of something and celebrating their/its achievements. And one of them says something such as, like, this is all the energy that we could ever use, right? Forever and ever and ever. We will never need energy again. And in true physicist fashion, the one guy's like, well, no, not forever, right?
For us, yes, we'll be fine.
Exactly. And I mean, I love this story as well. I mean, I'm going to bring up a few lines during our discussion of it. It's got some of my absolute favorite lines in all of science fiction, including probably my favorite line in all of literature.
Okay.
So,
Bold.
I mean, we'll get to all of that. Yeah, exactly. But, you know, the first line is something like, the one guy says, but, you know, okay, not forever, but it will last for our time. And the other guy says, yeah, well, so would the coal and uranium, right? And I think that's sort of, you know, we're now in that point in our civilization where everyone's like, yeah, okay, but, you know, global warming and whatever, it'll be fine for my lifetime, right? But that's not the point, right? We've got to start thinking as a species, looking forward to problems like this. But yeah, so then they go and have a little bit of an argument as, you know, saying, okay, but it's not going to last forever, can't last forever. And another favorite line of mine is they're like, yeah, okay, fine, it can't last forever. And then the one guy's like, oh, but you're thinking we'll switch to another sun, aren't you? And I mean, I love this sort of writing of Asimov is because that's sort of exactly what I was thinking when I'm reading. I'm like, yeah, okay, but, you know, when the sun's done, there's many of them. You just go to another one.
Yeah.
And he keeps bringing in these brilliant sort of analogies. He says, yeah, okay, but that's like saying you're in a rainstorm, you go under one tree and you say, oh, but it's fine. When this tree's wet, I'll just move to the next tree. And that's sort of already the beginning of the idea that, yes, we can make plans for this problem. We can solve it. But eventually we're going to have to come face to face with the problem that the energy is going to run out one day, right, in the universe. And then for they sort of have a dare or a bet and say, okay, well, if neither of us know the answer, why don't you ask the computer? Ask multivac. And so one of them compiles the question and says, how can we reduce the net amount of entropy in the universe? And I love to imagine these guys absolutely crapping themselves when the entire computer goes silent because they're like, oh no, what have we done? But that's what happens. The computer goes silent and then suddenly it whirs back into life, prints an answer, and in all caps it says insufficient data for a meaningful answer. And that's obviously a major point in the story because then they say, okay, whatever, obviously it doesn't know.
They just kind of forget about it.
Exactly. But we now know, obviously, that the computer does not, right? Once it's asked a question, It says insufficient data. It didn't say I don't know the answer. It says insufficient data. So we now can assume that it is going to look for that data, right?
I must say I like the description of multivac as something that's kind of very old-fashioned and analog, right? You know, it has flashing lights and clicking relays, and then it has
Yes.
a kind of display that it's like a kind of readout of the answer, which I enjoy.
Yeah.
There's no
No.
omnipotent, you know, AI voice or something. It's just a little display, and
Yeah.
you can imagine like pistons and steam coming out of it almost.
Yeah, and punch cards and that sort of stuff,
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's sort of this was written in sometime in the 50s. I'm not sure the exact year, but it was obviously this is the time when computers are now starting to be used, not in everyday life, but in certain applications, right? There are now supercomputers at NASA and whatever, and so this is sort of, I think, written sort of in answer to computers now being a thing. And I mean, considering that as well, I mean, what sort of foresight, right? I mean, other than maybe the clunky sort of hardware, this is fairly quite still relevant in today's age where computers are very much a thing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
And also like I love to bring up the Captain Kirk paradox, but this computer doesn't explode when it's given a question it can't answer. So disappointing in that regard.
Exactly. No. I mean, it did go quiet for a second, right?
Yeah, almost. It threatened.
But yeah, no steam and cracking gears and all of that. Yeah.
How disappointing! Come on.
Kirk would not know what his next move would be. Yeah.
No, exactly.
But then at this stage we leave Multivac and our two technicians behind, and we flash very far forward into the future to a family which is on a spaceship. And another sort of brilliant little bit of writing, I think, by Asimov is the way he changes names as time goes on, right?
I was just about to point this out, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, the original guys are whatever the names are.
It's
Alexander
Adele.
and Bertram.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Those are their surnames, yeah. Adele and Lupov, yeah.
Yeah.
So like normal names, but then you obviously had a similar reaction, right? You're like, oh my goodness, this is what? Jared, Geraldine, and Geraldette 1 and 2.
Yeah. Kind of slightly recognizable, but in strange enough that you kind of lean in. You're like, okay, something has changed here.
Exactly. From the first line, you know that something's strange. Yes.
Yeah. Can I read the first sentence? Because this is quite.
Please.
It is quite jarring. So, Gerard, Geraldine, and Geraldette the first and second watched the starry picture in the visiplate change as the passage through hyperspace was completed in its non-time lapse. It's like, what is going on?
You know what I mean? Actually,
you're
non-time lapse. Yeah, I didn't even pick up on
like
that.
You say. It's just the matter of fact delivery. You know that
exactly
for these people, this is ordinary and they're used to it, which kind of situates us in this time quite well, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. Straight from the get-go, you know, okay, these people's names are strange. They're traveling in space. It's ordinary. We clearly very far ahead from where we just were, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I know. I mean, great piece of writing. I love that. And so now it tells us obviously that mankind is not only multiplanetary but multistellar or interstellar, right? They're living across multiple solar systems, and they seem to be entirely dependent on the computers now, at least in terms of their guiding, sort of their direction. Because they definitely no longer understand the mechanics behind the computers, right? I mean, they even say like Jared at one stage knew that AC stands for automatic computer, but he was on the verge of forgetting that, right? So clearly no one knows about these computers anymore. They just exist, and they sort of taken over the guiding role of humanity.
Indeed, yeah.
Um, and yeah, so this family is now traveling to another planet around another star, and they're sort of feeling a little bit strange about leaving Earth. So this is still humanity, sort of very definitely still comes from Earth, but they are now spreading out to the stars, right? Um, and another beautiful part that I love here is Gerard says he's glad that he's part of his generation and no other. Um, I,
Well,
I,
wouldn't you be? I mean,
exactly right. I mean, it sort of reminds me, he's like, thank goodness these computers are taking control and that we can go and travel stars and everything. It's sort of, I mean, I remember going through some museum at some stage looking at like medieval medicine equipment and that sort of stuff, and you're like, oh, geez, thank goodness I'm alive now and not back
yeah.
then when they were doing all of that, right? Um, so yeah, I just that's sort of, even though these people are sort of foreign to us with these strange names and hyperspace and all of that, um, he still connects them to us and shows us that they are still mostly human, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, here as well, they mention something. He mentions something about in place of the transistors that old computers had, they now come molecular valves. Now, I was going to look into this a little bit more, but as far as I know, we've kind of this was obviously him predicting the future of computing technology, and I think we've kind of skipped that phase because you mentioned quantum computer already. That's sort of going to surpass the molecular phase in computing technology. So transistors are still macroscopic to use the term lightly, and then quantum computing already shifts far past the molecular stage into the quantum stage, right? Which is his next stage of computing. But just thought that was interesting. His sort of prediction of evolving computing technology,
Yeah.
and the fact that we're not going exactly strictly according to that. We're probably going quite a bit faster than that, actually.
And
Um,
interesting that the planetary AC, which has made hyperspace travel
mm,
possible, is half the volume of a spaceship, right? So still
yes,
quite massive, right? And
exactly. Yeah, but
one
also
one
massively.
would think as computing develops, it gets smaller and smaller.
So it has gotten smaller from multivac, right? Because multivac was this vast underground um, storage area or whatever,
Oh,
and
right,
so now,
okay, yeah,
it's gotten smaller. But I mean, then it sort of, it keeps getting smaller, but also keeps getting more complex, right? So you could have probably fit multivac into a much smaller size, but now microvac is even more complicated than multivac ever was. So now it can't be fit into your palm. It still has to take up the entire spaceship. Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, interesting to watch how the computer evolves as well. Um, but yeah, so then this whole family, they're traveling to this new world. They're all uncertain, and the father's sort of explaining to the family, trying to reassure them of their decision and whatever. And at some point, they start asking about, um, well, what's going to happen with humanity, and uh, why is we feeling weird about going to this planet, and what's going to happen next? Your children are going to be going to other planets, etc., etc. And then at some stage, the father compares. He says, "Yeah, okay, but at some stage, all the stars are going to run down, right?" And then also great explanation for entropy. I mean, we haven't sort of touched on that yet, but he mentions entropy as being, I think it was the measure for the amount of running down in the universe, right?
That is a great way to put it.
Um,
Yeah.
it's a great way to put it, right? Because I mean, I think most people have a fairly intuitive understanding of what entropy is. Is that a brick wall has got low entropy, but if you smash the brick wall and all the bricks are all over the place, that's got high entropy. So a low entropy state is a state that has more order. higher entropy state is a state with less order. And the universe used to be in a much lower state of entropy, and as time goes by, as we use energy, it becomes more and more disordered, right? And then this is my favorite part of the whole story, and coming up to my favorite line, one of my favorite lines in all of literature, is the little girl starts to get stressed about this, right?
Yeah.
And the dad starts comparing the stars to batteries that she puts in toys. So like, the battery's going to run out, and the little girl says, okay, but when the battery runs out, why can't we just replace the battery? And he says, no, well, the stars are the batteries. So once the stars are gone, there's nothing we can do. And then this is my favorite line, she looks up at her dad and she says, don't let them, Daddy. Don't let the stars run down. And I think that is such a beautiful line. I mean, isn't that what man is asking the AC throughout the entire story? That's why I said the AC has taken on the parental role, right?
Yeah.
She's asking her dad, but then what does he do? He turns to the microvac and asks the exact same thing with the exact amount of fear, I think, right? Because then he gets the same answer back, insufficient data for a meaningful answer. And he's like, well, damn, okay, microvac doesn't know. That's terrifying. I'm just going to forget about it.
Yeah, let's just move on.
Exactly, let's just move on. So he sort of crumples up the paper, throws it away, and tells a white lie to the daughter. Don't worry, microvac's going to take care of it when the time comes. Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's quite possibly one of my favorite lines in all of literature. I absolutely love it. It's also the sort of thing that I feel very niche when quoting, because no one knows it, right? So yeah. But then we move on. And once again, we've got these strange names. Now they're even further away from what we used to.
Yeah.
The one guy's called, yeah.
One might assume that VJ-23X would be from the same planet because they were going to X-23. Right? Oh, it says, okay, of Lameth. So that might be a family name or something. Yeah. I don't know. I'm wondering.
I've never picked that up. It can't be coincidence, right? I reckon there's a good chance. Yeah, nice. Yeah, because I mean, their names are, one guy is VJ-23X of Lameth, and the other guy is MQ-17J of Nikron.
Yeah.
So already we are feeling more of a disconnect, right? These guys are not exactly the humans that we know, but they clearly far in the future.
Yeah, and they're looking at a small map of the galaxy. It's almost trivial to them, right? Like, as we would look at the map of the Earth, they would look at the map of the galaxy.
Exactly. Yeah. So, the sort of uncertainty about leaving Earth in the previous section with the Gerods, I'll call them, is obviously gone now. They no longer tied to one planet. They're now a galactic species. And I mean, also, they just start throwing around. This is where I think this is classic. This is what the whole of Foundation is like. They just start throwing around stuff which you're supposed to just sort of go with. Is talking about sun power units that are being used up, and millions of years, and the population doubles every 10 years. Galactic Council, all sorts of stuff, which you're just sort of supposed to be like, okay, geez, this is very far in the future. They've obviously sorted a whole lot of stuff up. And then they suddenly drop it, and they're talking about population and everything. And then they suddenly say, well, we can thank immortality for that.
Yeah. Right? Because they're talking about every 10 years, the population is doubling. Which, if you're already at a galactic scale, is an enormous number.
Massive, right? Yeah.
And with immortality, there's a line before that I quite like, which is both seemed in their early 20s. Both were tall and perfectly formed.
Yes.
It almost makes me think of like the the silicon life forms at the end of AI, right? These tall,
Right.
almost
Yes.
perfect alien beings.
Exactly. I sort of imagine them as being a little bit sort of creepy, right? They don't quite look like
Yes,
humans. They're like the blueprint for humans, right?
they might be tall because they have less gravity
Yeah,
affecting
maybe.
their bones and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're very far removed um, from the Gerards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, the Gerards are still humans. They're just in a different place.
Yes.
Whereas these guys are now clearly quite different. They were once humans, but they are now something a little bit different.
Yeah.
Um, and then they start talking about using power and then going on to the next galaxy and filling the entire universe, which also just brings me to an interesting sort of point. Is that we spoke about this story sort of brushing over a few things, but the one thing that's very obviously out of the story is any sort of alien presence, right? So
Yes.
he obviously sort of decided, right, we're not dealing with aliens here. We're just going to show mankind taking over the universe slowly.
Because if you have aliens, then you have the Dark Forest. That's the
Very nice. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Um, yeah, it also sort of makes you wonder, maybe there were aliens and mankind was just a dominating force and they all died out because of it,
yeah,
right?
like a kind of
Um,
colonial thing going on there.
I mean, I was even thinking of a virus, right?
Oh, right, right, like
You know,
smallpox.
exactly. Everywhere humankind comes, it's just whatever else is there just can't match up and just eventually fades away. So it's not
Yeah,
even worth mentioning, especially once they start getting to such a scale.
yeah. Sorry, I just want to talk a little bit more about the
Yeah.
Dark Forest because I think this is a really nice way to look at that. I guess it's a hypothesis, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I'll talk about the novel, The Dark Forest, by Cixin Liu. I hope I pronounced it right.
Mm,
Mandarin
okay.
Chinese name.
That's three body problem, right?
Yeah, that's the second book.
Right.
But so
Ah.
an invading alien force is coming to Earth, right? And they're going to be here in 400 years, so we need to get ready. That's the problem of the novel.
Okay.
But the Dark Forest idea is part of how they approach it, right? And they develop a field called cosmic sociology, and there are two axioms of it,
Hmm.
right? So you have these two things that are true, and then you can build a whole field of research around the axioms. One is the goal of every civilization is to survive, and the second is every civilization must expand, but the total amount of matter in the universe remains the same.
Hmm.
And you can see very quickly here, I mean, quickly, quote unquote, how this becomes a problem for
Yeah.
for a galaxy full of alien species, right? Your
Yes.
resources are going to be very limited, and I don't know. I kept thinking of the Dark Forest while reading this because, yeah, you might think, billions of years, that scale doesn't really matter, but it actually becomes so quickly, relatively,
Yes.
a problem, right?
Yes.
And you can imagine, just throw in a bunch of alien species and how that becomes a whole mess in itself.
Exactly, because I mean, at the moment there are no alien species, and they're already worrying about it, right? They're already worrying about
Yeah,
energy and resources and all of that. So yeah, I mean, in reality, there must surely be some, if you, especially if you're talking at that scale, multiple galaxies and whatever, you're going to eventually come across other civilizations,
yeah,
and it will be much more urgent and much more of a problem than it even is in this book. It's been simplified here, but yeah, I mean, if you're talking on the scale of galaxies,
yeah,
um, yeah, then you obviously absolutely chowing through energy and resources. You have to be. So, yeah, no, that's very interesting. I mean, also, obviously, I haven't read that book, but in Foundation, in Asimov's Foundation series, he's got fictional field of study called psychohistory, which is
Oh yeah,
something
yeah,
very
that's the
similar to
driving
that.
thing about it, right?
Exactly. It's also, I don't know what they are off the top of my head, but it's also got, I think, 3 or 4 axioms for sort of how humankind will behave, or how a civilization will behave after it reaches a certain point, a certain scale. So
Right.
the civilization will not behave that way at our current state, being on Earth, but when you get to the scale of a galaxy, it's sort of inevitable, and you can just predict the way things are going to go. It's sort of the removal of free will. It's sort of just things go according to the theory, despite individual choices and
Yeah.
decisions, which
Also, there's
is obviously counteracted by most of the story, showing sort of exceptions to those rules. Yeah,
right.
sorry.
I was going to say that the two axioms of cosmic sociology, like,
Mm.
are the driving force of this story. Right. A civilization must survive.
Right. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
must expand, and the amount of matter remains the same.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
the second part is clashing with those first two parts.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 And that's entropy, right? It says, yeah, okay, you can go forever and ever and ever, but not forever, right?
Yeah.
um, so yeah, anyway, back to our VJ and MQ, or whatever the names are.
Yeah, they're having the same conversation that we're expecting at this point in the story, right? We know that
Exactly.
some people are going to arrive at this problem and ask a computer
Yes.
at a later developmental stage.
Exactly, because then we sort of have. I love the at some stage the one guy says, okay, but when all the stars are done, why can't we just build some new ones out of interstellar gas? And then sort of mirroring the first part with Adele and Lupov, the second guy sarcastically says, or we could just build them out of dissipated heat. Which, once again, that's sort of like the exact thing that the story is trying to just tell us is, well, you can't do that, right? So yeah, then they argue and says, okay, well, why don't you ask the, what's it called at the stage, galactic AC, which we sort of get told is it already, I think it's on its own world at this
Yeah,
stage, right?
and the molecular valves have been replaced by surges of submesons.
Yes, which I don't think is a real thing. I don't quite know what a submeson is. I mean,
Oh, but it
a
sounds
meson
good.
is a,
It sounds
exactly. It
good.
sounds great. And yeah, so obviously that's sort of showing that the computer is getting less and less physical, right? It's now just laws and rules, operating instructions, causing components of the universe to compute stuff. You no longer need a physical computer. It's just sort of programmable matter, I suppose. We got to that sort of thing in Star Trek at some stage. But then, they eventually ask the Galactic AC the same question: how can we reverse entropy? And then one of the more brilliant things of the story, I think, as well, is the very subtle way that he shows how the computer is getting more and more sort of intelligent and self-aware, because instead of just saying insufficient data for a meaningful answer, it now says there is insufficient data for a meaningful answer. So it's clearly starting to sort of become a little bit more thinking and less just computer answer. It's now thinking about it, and it's sort of saying, yes, don't worry, I'm working on it. Right?
Yeah.
And then just before we move on, I mean, something which I love here is I don't remember how they bring it up. Oh yes, one of the characters says, well, we know that entropy can't be reversed. You can't turn smoke and ash back into a tree. And then the other guy says, oh, do you have trees on your world? And then they stop the conversation, right? Then the computer gives the answer. And I just think that's interesting, because already in language today we have, I mean, I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but we've got sayings which exist from things which no longer exist, right? there's certain sayings and idioms and stuff in our language which no longer sort of make sense. I mean, the one example that I'm now thinking of, not quite a saying, but it's a story, with Sleeping Beauty with the spindle, right? I mean, what the hell is a spindle? No one uses that anymore. But we all know that pretty much from that story, right? That little wheel that you spin cloth with or whatever, no longer exists. Not really, not in that form. But through stories and through sayings and stuff, these things get preserved in language. And I just think that's a nice little detail that he added.
Yeah. It's a brilliant piece of writing because he doesn't lose sight of I guess the people and how people have changed, right? It's not just teasing out his neat little concept, which he does so brilliantly.
Exactly. Yeah.
But he has other threads going.
Yes.
Which I quite like.
Yes.
And another one which I really enjoy is the closing here. The two men thereupon returned to the question of the report they were to make to the Galactic Council. And This is like, I mean, literally yesterday, right, I had a kind of climate crisis existential moment of like, oh my God, this is all going to go to shit, right? You have it like 3 times a week at this point.
Yeah, easy,
and then, and then I just thought like, yeah, but tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to go to work because I have to, and I need to pay the bills, and I'm just going to have to get on with my life. And that's
someone else
that is
will
such
solve
a human
that problem, right?
Exactly, but it's such a human thing of there's this impending doom issue coming along, but I need to get on. I need to get the groceries. I need to get a good night's sleep. I need to do the things I need to do.
I can't afford to worry about this now.
Exactly.
When it happens, and we'll deal with it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's all of the characters that we encounter in the story. They all do the same thing, right? They ask the question, they get the answer, and it's probably the most terrifying thing that you can get. I mean, I think it was what's his name, Lovecraft, H.P. Lovecraft, who said something like the oldest emotion is fear, and the deepest kind of fear is fear of the unknown, right? So to get an answer that says, if
he would say that.
Exactly, right? Yeah. But, if the computer said, oh, yeah, no, the stars are going to die one day, and there's no way to reverse entropy, you'd probably be like, oh, shit, all right, okay. But because it says there's insufficient data, you say, oh, my goodness, this computer, which is guiding our entire race, doesn't even know that. I'll just crumple up the piece of paper and think about it later.
Yeah.
So yeah, which is a great analogy. It's sort of exactly what we're doing with the world at the moment. We're like, well, what happens.
Indeed.
And then we move on, and we encounter Z Prime. So another new strange name, sort of already sort of gives me an impression of sort of decentralized consciousness, almost, I suppose you could say. It's sort of less in touch. It sounds less like an individual name and sort of more like a designation or something, right?
Right. Yeah.
And that's sort of what we get told then, is that Z Prime doesn't really have a physical body. He's just a mind floating in space. Well, he does have a physical body.
Yeah, I was about to. Yeah,
right.
All the bodies are in a kind of matrix.
Yes,
planet.
Right. Yeah.
Being maintained, but their minds are free to wander the universe.
Yeah. Which sort
sentient gas clouds. This is our favorite from Star Trek.
There we go. Yeah, they always say, those gas clouds normally say something like, "Oh, one day, you'll get to this point as well."
Exactly. Yeah.
So maybe this is our fate, right? Bodies in a matrix and sentient gas clouds. But so sentient gas cloud Z Prime is wandering around the galaxy, and it already sort of gives me a feeling of unease, right? Sort of, what is your purpose now, right? This section sort of shows that the AC now has a purpose, but the individual humans are sort of, they're just wandering around asking questions. They're not really
Yeah,
doing anything anymore.
but they've also used
Um,
up all the space. There's nothing
exactly. Yeah.
interesting, I guess, to discover.
And so this is also then he encounters someone called what? D sub one.
D sub one, yes.
And they start talking about, he says something like, which galaxy do you come from? And the guy's like, oh, we call it the galaxy. And he's like, oh, yeah, we call ours that as well, because all galaxies are the same. So it's sort of already giving a sense of boredom as well with the universe. Oh, all galaxies are the same. Yeah, whatever. But then they start thinking, oh, there must be an original galaxy. And so they ask the universal AC, which now is also no longer really physical. They mention that the computer exists mostly in hyperspace,
Yes.
which is just a catch-all term for not space, I suppose. So it's no longer a physical thing. It's just a hyperspatial thing that exists somewhere, and you just ask it questions. And they ask where the original galaxy of man is. AC takes them there. They see that the original sun is dead. And so naturally they ask the question, how can entropy be reversed? And they get the standard answer. There's insufficient data for a meaningful answer. But this is the first point that one of them tries to do something about it, right? Because now obviously this is starting to be impending and starting to create actual anxiety. So Z Prime, upon getting this answer, says, okay, well, screw it. I'm going to try.
Well,
Right.
also because they're immortal, and so they will inevitably reach this point of no return that they're fearful of, right?
Point. Yeah. It's no longer someone else's problem. They will
exactly. It's now finally their problem.
Exactly. So he then goes and does the futile task of gathering up some. Does he do that? Is this the point in the story that they do that? I think he gathers up some
interstellar
hydrogen and starts building his own sun, right? So now the mankind has the ability to actually sculpt the universe at that sort of scale and starts building their own stars. But also at this point, we are told that, I just think it's important, that each computer designs and constructs its successor, right? Which is why we now realize that we're not asking individual computers the same question over time. We're realizing that we're asking the same computer the same question, just in later incarnations of itself, right?
Yeah.
So it must be getting awfully tired of it at this point. Like, yes, I'm collecting data, just leave me alone, right? Yeah, and then we move on and things start getting quicker now, obviously because it's more speculative, because now we get to man. So all the individual men or humans have started to blend into one, and man now thinks as one entity. So now you have man and the cosmic AC, which also exists in hyperspace. So you've got these two entities, one which created the other, and the other has now far exceeded the first, right? But man now obviously looks out and sees the universe is no longer what it once was, right? And this is, so the sort of universe has all the energy that can be used has been used, and the universe is now empty and cold and dying. And this is known in physics as the heat death of the universe, which I think is still the main hypothesis, or the strongest hypothesis for the end of the universe. There are a few others, because this is sometimes called the big freeze, which is a little bit misleading because I don't think it necessarily has to be frozen. It just has to be no difference in energy. So that's what entropy is that you get to a thermodynamic equilibrium where no energy can no longer be exchanged, right? Because that's what energy and all of that is it's the exchanging of energy between one body to another. That's how we get work and power and all of that. If you just have energy in itself, it can't do anything unless it's exchanged. So this is, unfortunately, probably the most likely end to the universe based on our current understanding. So yeah, man looks out and asks the same question: can we not turn back the clock? Can we not make the universe once again?
Can we just point out, that man is still futilely trying to plow along. So for every 1,000 stars that die, they're able to make one out of the dust.
Right.
Just to kind of
good point.
barely keep going, right? So there is still a drive for survival, right? Even in this, merged conscious state that we can't even imagine, there is still, humanity in there as we understand it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it makes you, to be awfully pretentious, it makes you think of Sisyphus, right? It's like, well, what can we do? Well, we'll do whatever we can, right? No matter how inefficient, no matter how futile, we have to do this. This is all we can do. We might as well smash 1,000 white dwarfs together to make a sun, because what else are we going to do?
Yeah.
And so, then they ask the cosmic AC, and I think this is actually the second time, I forgot to mention it, but once again, a slightly more sophisticated answer. The cosmic AC now says there is as yet insufficient data for a meaningful answer. And now also man starts to sort of push back, right?
Yeah.
And ask questions. He says, okay, but so there's no insufficient data, collect more data, and I imagine the AC being like, yeah, what do you think I'm doing, right? Like, the reason I've told you there's insufficient data is because I'm still doing it, right? Yeah. So don't come along with your bright ideas. So it says, I will do so. I've been doing so for 100 billion years, and I've been asked this question many times. And then another one of my absolute favorite lines is, man says, well, is there going to come a time when there's sufficient data, or is the problem completely insoluble in all conceivable circumstances? And the AC says, no problem is insoluble in all conceivable circumstances, right? So it hasn't given up, no. Just like man, right? Man is still smashing stars together, and the cosmic AC is still looking for this last answer to the question. And man asks it to keep working, and it does. And then we sort of get to the end where all the galaxies have died, and one by one man starts to fuse with AC. So now we no longer have these two entities. Man and AC start to fuse into one, and AC is also now just called AC. There's no clarifying word. And sort of, I love the moment when man's last mind pauses and looks back out. And it's like, is this the end? Can nothing be done? And we get the same answer again. It's like, I'm looking for data. And then, we get to the sort of end of the story where matter, energy, space, and time has ended. Nothing exists except AC. So now the universe is dead. It's gone. But there is still this computer which cannot end its own existence because it still has this one last bloody question that it can't answer, right? But now the universe has ended. All data that could possibly be collected has been collected. And so for an ageless moment, it reassembles this data into all different combinations and eventually finds the answer. Turns out there is an answer. Entropy can be reversed. But now there's no one to tell it to, right? It's solved the problem, but it can't tell anyone the answer. And in order to demonstrate the answer and to give the answer to someone, it says the famous words, of course, let there be light. And there was light. So then we obviously get the implications that AC has now become God, in inverted commas, and has created a new universe and will then create man again. Supposedly, in order to sort of give it the answer, or by making the universe is already giving it the answer, right?
Yeah.
So
But
yeah,
this is
then
I think this is why a physicist might enjoy this,
mm,
because there is I think it is a kind of beautiful speculative answer for the Big Bang, right?
yes, yes,
Yeah. So what came before, and obviously the answer to the question of what could happen at the end, right? And tying those
yeah,
together.
yeah.
And am I right in saying that there is thinking that the Big Bang did come after a heat death of a universe,
So
or
that's
along those lines?
yes, that's one of the hypotheses, right? So that's sort of related to the what's it called? The not the big bounce might be called that. Sort of the idea that this is happening over and over again. We have this expanding universe which eventually slows down and contracts, and once it contracts to an absolute minimum space, that creates a big bang in itself, right? And the whole thing starts over again.
Right.
So there is the idea that this is constantly happening because many physicists, myself included, will say, people always ask, okay, what came before the Big Bang? And the answer is, of course, well, there wasn't a before the Big Bang. The Big Bang was the beginning of time. There
Yeah.
is no before the Big Bang. And yet, still, as a human being, you say, yes, yeah, okay, but what came before the Big Bang, right? Like, you can't just say, oh, it came out of nothing and oh, it comes out of quantum fluctuations in the vacuum and everything. Yes, I understand all of that in theory, but we still can't quite imagine, yes, but what was the force? What was the driving force? And I mean, as two staunch atheists, we avoid the question or the implication that, oh, there must have been an intelligence that says, oh yes, let's start the universe. Because we'll probably get to that in our discussion of the next story, is that yes, okay, but then what started the intelligence? You're just asking the same question, right?
Yes, indeed.
By saying there was an intelligence that started it, you're still not answering the question. You're just adding an extra layer so that you don't have to deal with it, just like man did in the story, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting way of getting around that problem.
That being said, as an atheist, if I died and woke up and there was an intelligence there waiting for me, my I'll say this: my jaw wouldn't drop that far. It's
Okay,
it's
right?
not it's not the it's not the
No, yeah, exactly.
if you would get
I
there and you'd be like, okay, that's good enough, right? That
yeah,
I can.
I think our main problem with it is people claiming that it's the only answer, right, and that it's the most likely answer.
And their
Um,
answer is better than another one's answer.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that
and
we know
then
anything about it, right?
yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, no, you're right. If you died, you woke up and he was there, I'd be like, ah, you mother, right?
yeah.
Like cheeky bastard.
And then
um,
everyone would be like, "Told you so." I mean, that's the curse. That's the ultimate curse of being an atheist. You never get to gloat.
yeah, no, exactly,
We'll
right.
never have that opportunity.
We'll never have that opportunity. Yeah. Um, I mean, yeah. Since we're on that, I mean, should we move quickly onto our next story?
Yeah,
Because
let's
that's
do
sort
it.
of what that whole story is about. I mean, this story is even shorter. So once again, highly encourage you to go and find it and read it. It's called The Last Answer, and it is exactly that scenario. We start with a 45-year-old physicist who's in the lab somewhere, and he has some sort of problem, heart attack or something,
Yeah,
and
Murray Templeton. I just
oh yes,
wonderfully
yes.
ordinary name.
Yeah. Ordinary name, exactly. Murray Templeton
Yeah,
has a heart attack at 45 years old. Um, and he's astonished, right? And he realizes that suddenly he's looking down on his body, and he's like, "Oh damn!" Or all those guys were right.
yeah,
I'm still here. I'm still conscious. There is an afterlife, right?
yeah,
Um, and yeah, so then suddenly there's a sort of bright light and a presence that he becomes aware of, and it's this suddenly this voice starts speaking to him, and he asks all the sort of typical questions: are you God? Is this heaven? Is this hell? And I mean, this voice I don't know about you, but it pisses me off. My
Very
goodness.
obnoxious.
It's so obnoxious because throughout the whole story as well, it's like, well, I could do this myself, but like, couldn't be bothered, and I'm the greatest and everything,
Yeah.
which is exactly how I would imagine God being like.
And then once Templeton finds out that the voice is actually picking consciousnesses to bring into this so-called afterlife, um, Templeton is wondering what happens to the rest, and he goes, "Oh, of course, you imagine hell. Oh, how silly of me!"
Yes,
But it's
yes,
so obnoxious, so annoying.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, no, it completely pisses me off, and I think it pisses him off as well, right?
For
Because
sure. I think that's why he gets to his conclusion at the end.
exactly, because I mean, yeah, we'll go through this in less detail. Essentially, towards the end, he starts to realize, okay, this voice wants him to think, right? It selected him to think, and he says, okay, but why don't you know everything? And the voice says, yes, I know everything, but I don't know myself. I don't know where I came from. I don't know how I came into existence. So there is at least one thing that I don't know.
Yes.
So, and then, yeah, he's like, well, I could think about it, but I haven't, so.
And I'm taking great minds and letting them think about it.
Exactly. Because they come up with unexpected things. So that's what he's done is or it has preserved Templeton's consciousness and is essentially forcing him to think about anything for an infinite amount of time. And given an eternity, he will eventually have to think about this problem. And Templeton decides, no, well, bugger that. I'm going to rebel. I'm going to think about how to kill myself or end my own existence. And the voice says, oh, well, if you do that, I will just reinstate your existence with whatever weakness you found removed or protected, right? So then he reaches the inevitable conclusion that, okay, well, then what I will think about is how to end you, right? And then he sort of, the voice says, all right, cool, you do that, whatever, doesn't bother me, disappears. And Templeton then sort of realizes, well, this is probably actually the whole point of this. This is the last answer, is how do we end this thing that has existed for eternity? It wants to end. That's the only thing it could possibly want after an eternity is an end. So he now has his task and starts thinking about it, how to kill God, essentially.
But we haven't spoken about that because we could have touched on it with the last question, but being immortal sounds awful.
It does, right? Yeah. I mean, living for hundreds of years, yeah, maybe, but being immortal, yeah, might be a bit much.
Yeah, it is interesting how these rhyme in the sense of like a kind of ultimate question answer that deep down I think we all try to reckon with,
right?
And it gives us these answers, for lack of a better word, answers that are they don't feel like trivial. You know what I mean?
No,
it's not some kind of cheesy, neatly bow wrapped. I'm struggling to put this together, this thought, but it is.
No, but I get exactly what you sort of mean. It's not just sort of a bullshit answer. It's a little bit more nuanced than that.
I mean, you read it and then you still think about it. You're okay.
Exactly. It's a thinker. It makes you think about it and realize that this answer isn't, this is the best that he can write in a story, but it gets you thinking, right? It absolutely does.
It does.
Yeah.
I would say, especially the last question is a stunning example of this. I mean, it's one that you put down and you kind of stare at the wall for 10 minutes.
Absolutely,
You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think that's exactly what I did, right? And that's how I then found the last question. Is I read the last answer and I was like, oh, I'm obsessed with this. Going to start doing research about this, looking at all kinds of stuff. And in that process, I found the last question as well, because it leaves you wanting more. It's like, oh, I need to think about this, right?
Yeah.
I need to start pondering these questions. And especially, read this when I was 15 or whatever. That's exactly the time when you sort of first touching on these things yourself, right? These sort of existential questions and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, resonated a lot with me. And I mean, also just something, I can't actually find it, but I kind of know it off by heart, is my favorite quote from this story is he says something like, okay, well, if you are this omnipotent being, you with a whole lot of people, why are you spending time with me? Am I special? And the being says, no, I'm actually with many people at one time or whatever. And he says, okay, but are you one or many? And he says, the voice says, well, if you were to imagine that you were an amoeba who can consider individuality
Yes.
only in connection with individual cells, and you were to ask a sperm whale whether it was one or many, which is made up of 40 quadrillion cells or whatever,
Yes.
how could the sperm whale answer in a way that would be comprehensible to the amoeba? Which once again,
there it is.
bloody obnoxious, but that's exactly
it.
It gives you a sense of what sort of being this entity is, right?
Well, as to what being it is, it very well might just be the AC in our own headcanon, right? Because
very nice.
It's entirely plausible, right?
Entirely. I mean, maybe we are in the second universe, right? Where the AC is already there.
Yeah. Imagine if he was right and he just nailed it. There was a universal computer and it kept evolving and evolving and it created the universe that we're in. That'd be stunning.
Yeah. No, that's a great connection, actually. But yeah, so I mean, these are Asimov's two, I would say, most famous stories. And yeah, this episode's releasing on the 21st of May, which is the day that the last question is first asked in 2061 or something, I think it is.
Could we say that the AC, whenever it makes a new version and a successor, it's like installing the question in the subroutines, so it's always
probably
clicking away. I love that.
Yeah, I would say so. It's like whenever it's always dedicating a bit of its own resources to this question, right? It's always and every bit of data that it collects, it stores for this question, because it doesn't know what's going to be relevant, right? Clearly, you need the entire universe worth of data in order to answer the question. So by living through the entirety of the universe, you get the data, and the answer is that big as well, right? The answer is a universe. You can only sort of explain it in that way. So
so the only way to get there is to get all the way to the end.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we can imagine, obviously, this process continuing. Is that AC has now made this new universe, and in this universe, surely a new computer is going to be made and ask the same question. Right?
Yeah, someone's going to have the same issue.
Yeah. So because clearly it can be done in this story, at least, and it'll carry on going forever and ever.
Indeed, like this podcast.
Yeah, there we go.
Maybe we can, when we get to 2061, we can do a last question.
Revisit it, yeah.
Episode 2000 or whatever.
Nice. I like that, yeah. But yeah, any final thoughts, I suppose, on anything more than this?
No, I think we've covered everything. Yeah, I'm excited to get into Asimov more.
Right.
And
Yes,
I
I think
think
me as well.
yeah, and I think foundation, like reading and then going to the show, will be a fun exercise.
Yes, yeah. Because I mean, I've watched the first season of the show and I've read the first book, right? And it is quite different from what I can sort of tell. But I think they do complement each other. I think I would like to do that as well, as read the books and watch the show and see how they compare.
Yeah,
Because I think with most things, it's yeah, okay, maybe it's different from the book, but maybe that's a good thing, right?
yeah. I'm always interested in the choices of
Yeah,
adaptation because you do
yeah,
have to, because they're different mediums, so
exactly.
you have to honor the medium that you're in, right?
And I mean,
And I'm
some of my
interested
favorite
in that.
things. Yeah, you haven't watched the show at all.
No, no,
Okay,
I've not touched any foundation.
right. Yeah, no, but I mean, there's like one or two things that I can think of from the show, which, at least from what I've read so far, are not in the book. And I mean, I think they're brilliant. I'm like, oh my god, this isn't in the book. I mean, it's like one of the best parts of the show,
But
and it's
I
not
also
from the book.
understand
So,
that the show is quite controversial for book fans, which is a
well, isn't it always, right? I
well,
mean,
true,
come on.
true.
They're always going to be like, oh, no, you didn't do it faithfully. And it's like, well, yeah, if you want a faithful interpretation of the book, read it,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, so, but yeah, I mean, I obviously one of the greats, Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke, and there's one other guy who I always forget the name of.
Philip K. Dick, that would be it.
No. I think it's the guy who wrote. Apparently, he wrote Starship Troopers, the book.
Oh, okay.
I think
Quick Google.
if I remember this correctly, I've forgotten his name. They always talked about the big three. It was Asimov, C. Clarke, and
But Philip K. Dick wouldn't be in that. I'm surprised.
no, I think that was a bit later, right? Philip K. Dick was probably 70s or something, wasn't he?
But Philip K. Dick is Blade Runner. Like, come on.
Yeah. No, of course. But I think this was earlier. This was sort of 40s and 50s. Sort
Oh,
of,
okay. So kind of
original sci-fi.
yeah, nuclear age. Yeah. So
exactly. Yeah.
Robert A. Heinlein.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah,
Right.
that sounds right. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, obviously, as a sci-fi fan, you sort of they're like the greats. You've got to read them at some stage.
Yeah.
I'd love to get into.
And that's kind of part of our project here is,
Yes.
not only are we, looking at the fun stuff that we love and checking out the, new Star Wars films or whatever, but
Exactly.
we're doing the homework, I feel like.
Exactly.
That's part of
exactly, it. Yeah. And I think we both love sci-fi through the ages, right? It's sort of evolution as a genre.
Yeah, it's
looking at the.
It's a window into what people are thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and if you're interested, I'm quite interested in history, but history has its limits to a certain point when you're just talking about Hitler and Stalin and all the presidents, right? What were people thinking about? What were the advancements in science and technology and things like that?
And how were they making people feel about the
exactly
world at that stage?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, once again, go and read these stories. They're half an hour read each at the most.
And we're not condoning piracy or anything, but they are very easy to find.
Yeah, just do a Google search and then you're on your own with your own morality. But I sort of imagine the little that I know about Asimov is he would want his stories to be read, right? And whatever.
Well, he's also dead, so he doesn't care about royalties. So
exactly, exactly. That helps a lot. Yeah. But yeah, those are our thoughts on the last question and the last answer. Next Monday, we will be back discussing more recent sci-fi, The Mandalorian and Grogu, which I think is coming out this weekend.
Indeed, yes.
So I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about that.
The return of theatrical Star Wars.
Exactly.
It's big. It doesn't feel big, but it's big.
Yeah. No, I mean, it'll feel good to be in a cinema watching Star Wars again.
Yes, indeed.
And yeah, I mean, we did a couple episodes back, we did a whole Star Wars episode. So if you haven't listened to that yet, Go and listen to that. Our opinions on the Disney era of Star Wars. And yeah, I mean, also find us on Instagram. We're also on TikTok now. Where No Pod, at Where No Pod, on both platforms. And yeah, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube. And yeah, don't ask terribly complicated questions to computers
because they might
tomorrow.
explode.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or
They
create
might
a new
explode.
universe.
Or create it. You
One
don't know
or the
what's
other.
going to happen. Yeah. Just so be careful what you ask ChatGPT. You don't know what
just
it'll
ask it to do
remember.
your taxes. That's fine.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, we'll see you then next Monday with Mandalorian and Grogu.
Indeed.
And I mean, I suppose I will use your standard sign off and say live long and prosper.